So today, actually, I'm going to share with you some of the issues I think we're dealing with. But before that, I want to really give you a test. I think now we're into the mode of testing. Okay. So here's a picture I took of a device. There's an advertisement at the airport in Cape Town, South Africa. So can you guess what product it's trying to advertise? I heard GPS? Yeah, you're not very imaginative, but you're correct. I was in Australia. I was showing the same picture to a bunch of Australian educators and government people for 4 sessions, both in Victoria and in Canberra. They all said, this is advertisement for Viagra. Seriously. Last month, I didn't say this, and James was filming me that. Last month, I was just there. So I don't know how they associate this with Viagra, but if you do figure out, let me know. That can be a nice project, based on learning to do. Then, actually, there was a series of panels at the airport. So the next panel is this. Now you can guess. It's GPS now, right? Then you can guess. It's like this. It's very smart advertisement. It's really cool, right? But then I show this to some other people. If you get academics, professors, they got deeper thoughts. They said, you are making fun of American education reform. They said, we don't know which direction we're going, right? It's, we should do this. Should we get rid of schools, do charter schools, teacher evaluation, all those kind of things. So I said, well, if that's true, this is where we are in American education today. Now, that's actually precisely I'm going to talk about, because no matter how great the GPS is, it's a piece of technology. Without knowing where you're going, you will never get there. Right? Yeah, I just came up from the hotel. I got to type in where I'm going. I got to go to New Tech High. But where are we going with education, with our schooling, with our kids? Is really actually fundamentally the big question we all are here to ask as parents, as teachers, as school leaders. I'm a parent. One thing I've been thinking a lot about is what does it mean to have a great education? What are you going after? Most of you have kids, I bet. If you don't, you have some other people's kids, other people's children in your classroom anyway, right? So what makes a good education? My son is going to graduate from college next year. Before this year, I had great dreams about what education should be for him, and how I would measure. Now, my only indication is that if he does not move back to my basement upon graduation, that's success. That's how I would define successful education. Before that, I was, all kinds of things, right? Now, where are we? How do we keep our children out of our basement? That's our biggest challenge. So the goal of education is keep your kids out of your basement. It's not easy. It's not very easy. You know this data. A few weeks ago, data came out for the first time in the U.S., college loans has surpassed credit card loans. You remember that? It's $1 trillion. For the first time in the U.S. history, we got more people unemployed with college degrees than those without. That's quite scary, right? About the same time, a college dropout built a company in 8 years for $100 billion. That's called Facebook, right? So how does this work? Why don't we have more people go build Facebooks? That's the question. And also, if you think about it, $1 trillion is a lot of money, but it's only 10 Facebooks, right? I mean, if you get 10 people building 10 Facebooks, we've wiped out all the college debt, right? And also Zuckerberg, himself, right? He kind of dropped out. I was just in New York, met some of his middle school principals, and actually those guys were there. It was kind of fun. He couldn't survive the middle school. He got to go to private school. So what's wrong with him? He couldn't handle our school. Now the issue is, I think today I'm really going to talk about is think about what defines a good education. This question is really, really important, because if we go after the wrong goal, we'll not go very far. But education reform in the US and in many other countries, many conferences you go, many professional development events you attend, try to teach you how to build better GPSs, how to become more effective teachers, more effective schools, how to deliver something. But without delivering the right thing, you might be doing damages. Now here's another test for you. It's a history test. Do you guys know this? Where is this thing? Where's Easter Island? In Chile, right? Okay, in the South Pacific, right? Maybe it's actually quite far, about over 1,000 miles away from Chile. These are the giant stone heads, okay? And why were they built? Anyone know? No? Who built them? I have no clue, right? Not those guys who built a GPS, definitely. So there's a lot of story about this. But one story which has some scientific evidence, according to Jared Diamond, who wrote the book Guns, Steels, and Germs, and then he wrote another book called Collapse. According to his account, this giant stone heads is basically an older version of No Child Left Behind. Not joking, seriously. On this island, at one time, there was a great civilization, thriving civilization. About 12 family tribes lived on this island. And then they got into the idea that if whoever can build the most beautiful, more magnificent, bigger and heavier stone head, shows they have high quality life. And also shows a prosperous future. And because these heads can please God, who will bestow them prosperity and happiness in the future. So doesn't that sound like No Child Behind? We call those state test scores. So all the families got into this contest. They all go to the one end of the island, began to carve the stones, and bring them home and erect them. It's very hard to do. Imagine at that time, not much tools, 2,000 years ago. So they all go, all the men, all the great, just strong and powerful men went there, spent all the year carving this stuff, neglecting their field. They're not farming. At the same time, they are also exerting all the resources, cutting down the giant oil palm trees to carry them, burn them for cooking. So of course, when you neglect, the field is not going to produce anything for you, right? So famine, deforestation, desertification just happened. And people, in essence, the whole civilization collapsed. So it's interesting. What goals are you pursuing? Of course, these guys didn't really help them, these guys. That's the question. Are we pursuing the right thing? So what's America's new God in education? Actually, by the way, if you're from other countries, most other countries doing similar things. So if you look at in the US right now, we have the Common Core, right? I just wrote an essay about the Common Core on my blog. And people think I'm running against the Common Core standards. I'm not. As long as they are not common or core, that'll be fine. If it's not common or core, I'm okay. If it's just standards, that's okay, right? No. And you got race to the top, right? Race to the top is an interesting slogan movement. Take the Easter Island analogy. Do we know race to the top of what? Right? If you reach to the wrong top, what happens there? You reach to the top. Actually, my Chinese teaching would tell me, you never reach to anything. You should crowd it, because once you reach the top, the only place is going down. You don't like that. We don't like that. We don't want to raise our kids there to the top, push them off the cliff, then no child is left behind. That's the idea. Seriously, now think about it. What are we, out of all these major initiatives, by the way, Australia, England, they're all doing national standards. They're trying to do the same thing. So what are we trying to worship? What are we trying to build? So I want to call the test scores become our new God in education. So today I want to talk about, does this new God, have a plan to bestow upon us prosperity and happiness in the future? That's the question. So if you think about test scores, we are now today using test scores to judge everything. Even people like John Mercendorfer has to justify PBL's effectiveness using test scores. That's sad. Even technology has to justify, with by the way, I have my cool iPad. Alfred cannot make it work, but it's blame him. But anyways, we try to justify technology investment by test scores. We're trying to justify your existence, the teacher's existence, earning your meager wages by raising test scores, right? I know, you may make a lot of money, but still not much. But, so that's how we're trying to justify everything. But is it the right thing to use to justify? This from Albert Einstein. Einstein is a funny guy. He says, everyone is a genius. If you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its life believing it's stupid. Its test scores maybe the ability to climb the tree. We're judging PBL, we're judging technology, we're judging any innovative teaching or any innovative teachers by your ability to climb a tree while you are actually a fish. So that's really an interesting part. So anyway, you can download the slides on my website. You can take that. You can read all my blogs too. That's the only website you need to keep besides the PBL. A lot of the data and I use came from my last book and really more from the next one. The next book will be released in about a week. You can pre-order. You can find a lot of writings, all those stuff there. It's about entrepreneurs and creativity and how and why the Common Core and other standards are a bad bet on our children's future. So I have written a series of questions for you to think about. That's this talk is about. Think about test scores. Is a good judgment. So the first question is that why did not China have a big party? Not the Communist Party, which is huge. I meant a party to celebrate, a party to rethink. To celebrate, what do they have to celebrate? To celebrate the great test scores. The 2009 PISA test, everybody is very aware of this in the US. Remember the PISA? You should be very tired of PISA in Finland now. It's get sick of Finland. It's a very boring place, but driving many people to think about it because it used to score very high on the PISA. But in 2009, the most recent rounds of the PISA, China's Shanghai took #1 spot in all 3 categories: reading, math, and science. Are you all aware of the PISA? You are, right? I mean, it's not the city or the tower. It's the test. It's been about 10 years now. It's every 3 years does 1 round of testing on 15-year-olds. And now it's the largest international academic horse race of children. It's basically everybody race now. Currently in this round is happening right now, but 67 countries is part of it. And there are more schools, I heard yesterday. Schools are trying to take part in the PISA score. So anyway, it's great. It's happening. And many people believe PISA measures not only the quality of the country's education, but also the children's ability to survive in the future. Therefore, it's talked about as if it measures global competitiveness. That's how it's. When the PISA score was released, many people got very nervous. So now a lot of people are trying to study. Before, people were visiting Finland. We call them PISA tourists. Okay? And now they all moved to Shanghai. People are trying to figure out how could Shanghai score so high? What's going on there? So that's the study. And actually, many people, by the way, PISA is driving a lot of people nuts right now. People are trying to explain, find all kinds of reasons. How did those countries do so well? The U.S., you can't say the U.S. here because the screen is not big enough. The U.S. will be going down, way down. You can't. It's rank reading 17th, I think math 37th, and science 31st. It's really below, so you don't expect to find it. So people are trying to say, how could those countries do so well? A recent study out of PISA, to show you how crazy they are, the study said the performance on the PISA is highly correlated with a lack of natural resources. Right? That's right. Thomas Friedman even wrote a little op-ed piece based on the study on the New York Times. And so basically the argument is that countries have a lot of natural resources, like Saudi Arabia, Dubai, those areas, Kuwait, Iran. They have oil. They don't have to think about education. So they don't invest. That's why they perform so low. America too, you guys basically have too much. If we all move to Finland, our scores will go up. Just forget about the natural resources. Because if you look at the high-performing countries, they look at Singapore, Hong Kong, Japan, Taiwan, they don't have a lot of natural resources. Now the exception they put out is Canada and Australia. They have a lot of natural resources. But they're smart with the natural resource. Unlike other dumb people, these guys know we have money, we want to invest in education. That's a justification. I don't think actually that's a good explanation, but they're trying to explain this. My explanation is much better. If you look at top 5 countries, take Finland out. What's in common? What? Asia. That doesn't, being in Asia doesn't make you great. They all use chopsticks. Using chopsticks, 2 sticks to handle Big Mac and soup is a huge cognitive task. It's, if you don't believe it, give it a shot. Go try it, right? It's very tough. So think about it. I think the chopstick culture is really interesting. America, if you want to improve pizza, I would mandate chopsticks as part of no race to the top. Now, serious, but the interesting part is that the score, PISA score, has been used as the true indicator of a nation's quality of education and global competitiveness. When the score was released, President Obama called it a Sputnik moment. How many of you remember Sputnik moment? The Sputnik? You know what it was, right? It's as if Chinese students are armed with great math scores going to, attack the U.S. That was the idea. And Arnie Duncan, dear Arnie, talked about this as a wake-up call for Americans, and as if this is a big deal. And our great friend, Mark Tucker from the National Center of Education and the Economy, NCEE, came up with a big report called Standing on the Shoulders of Giants, which then turned partially into this new book, came out of Harvard Education Press called Surpassing Shanghai. So Shanghai has become the national goal for the U.S. By the way, this is actually quite annoying to me. I thought America had better goals, bigger goals, more aspiration. If you look at this history of U.S., modern history, it's not very happy. After Sputnik, JFK, remember what he wanted? He said, let's send some man to the moon. That's a goal. That's a national goal. Then you move to President Bush. What he said, his national goal was, let's read. Seriously, he said that. He said, I know it's tough for him, but that shouldn't be how it should never have become a national goal, right? He said, I want every 3rd grade to read. For a developed country, that's supposed to be 500 years ago, deal with illiteracy, right? It should never be a goal, it should be a floor, not the ceiling, right? And it's very interesting. It's just fascinating to me. That's not very inspirational for the supposed biggest country. And now we got this one that surpassed Shanghai. It's getting even more boring. Why do you want to surpass Shanghai? So now, but Americans are not the only dumb people. There's more dumb people out there too. I can show you more. I was in Australia. A big study came out of the Grattan Institute. Was based in Melbourne. And it's a nonprofit think tank. Talk about how Australian students are 2 years behind students in Shanghai. So Shanghai is great. It's talk about this thing. This report was carried by every major news media. Murdoch didn't even have to hack into their phones to find out because it was out there. They know this what's happening. So 2 years behind. And in the U.S., actually by the U.S., China has not only become the great education country, but the country of everything that's beating the U.S. Anyone from Pennsylvania? Okay, remember you had a governor called Ed Randall, right? Was he 2-term, right? Okay, he was I don't know how good he is, but I think he's funny. But about 3 years ago, when he was still in power, there was a football game scheduled in Philadelphia. Do you remember that time? They had to postpone the football game because of a snowstorm, the weather storm. And he was very unhappy about that. He went on radio and screamed at the Pennsylvanians of the following and said, we've become a nation of wussies. The Chinese are kicking our butt in everything. If this was in China, do you think the Chinese would have caught off the game? People would have marching down to the stadium, they would have walked, and they would have been doing calculus on their way down. No. It's just fabulous to think like this. I never know how could he drag China into it. China doesn't even play football, But now you know why. China has become the all-purposeful, useful, beautiful, great next-door kid, right? Remember I said, look at Johnny, how great he is. Why can't you do it? Right? That's the same thing. And in England is doing new education reform as well. Their new education secretary, Michael Gove, wrote in the Telegraph, said, I'm happy to confess I'd like us to implement a cultural revolution just like the one they've had in China. Like Chairman Mao, we've embarked on a long march to reform our education system. He probably has no idea what the Cultural Revolution was. But actually, if he knew, it's scary. If he didn't know, it's scary as well, right? It was the way to destroy education, right? So I want to show you this because I want to tell you, everybody outside China loves Chinese education. They think they're great. Celebrate because of test scores. They achieve so well. But, everybody loves except the Chinese. I was in China, actually, at that time. The Chinese didn't celebrate the PISA. They did not have a big party because they're worried. Why are they worried? Why didn't they celebrate? Because they wanted a Steve Jobs. They wanted Steve Jobs. Premier Wen Jiabao, when he was touring a lot of business, said, we have to have a Steve Jobs. China is facing major economic transformation. We have to move from a labor-intensive economy to a knowledge-based economy. And a knowledge-based economy has to rely on creative talents like Steve Jobs. And Kai-Fu Lee, who was a Google vice president, Google president of China, now has retired from that position. He said the next Google and Apple will emerge, but probably not in China, probably not even Asia, not in 25 years, not in 50 years, unless they abolish its education system. So it's an interesting paradox. You have China has the best education, has the worst education. Why? If you look at this data, this is patents, how we measure generally a nation's creativity. In China has been spending a lot of money doing this. Europe has 14,000 patent filings. China has 473. That's patents filed in international patent offices. That's very little. Do you remember this? China has 1.3 billion people, and that's 20% of the world's population, 9% of GDP, 12% of R&D expenditure, and the patents is about 1%. And even that 1%, half of the 1% was created by multinational subsidies, not in China. So, of course, you would think about what's going on here. You have to say, if based on any natural distribution, I would think there will be more Steve Jobs born in China, right? Baby Steve Jobs, baby Jobs, but what happened to them? What happened? That's why I said we got to abandon education. That's the problem. Singapore, the same problem. The old good Wozniak and was interviewed on BBC saying Singapore can't do it either. And Singapore got angry and said, why? Because you have such a great education. So the best education, worst education, interesting paradox. That's question number one. Question number two, why aren't the model minority happy? So you want to say, who is the model minority? I am one model minority, okay? The Chinese, the Asians, East Asians. This term was created as a racist term to deny the existence of racism in the US, actually. To say, oh, well, look, the Asians can make it, others can make it. It's completely nuts. Yesterday, data came out, the Asian immigrants become the largest intake. They're the best educated and earn the highest income. That's a distortion. If you take any ethnic group, if you have that higher education, your income will go well. So that's the business. The model minority is a very racist term to use, to deny the existence of racism. But I'm not going to deal with that. But the model minority term is still used today in education. Because the Asian kids, somehow they always score very well in your schools. If they're in the schools, they always do well. I know some schools trying to buy Asian kids to help them meet the AYP. But They do. They're serious too. I'm not joking. I have a daughter who is in high school. I try to get her out of testing, But you look at some of the data, NAEP data. The Asian minority is doing great. They outscore all other groups, including Caucasians, in all tests. It's very interesting. And then the Asians do, in other domains, it's about 5% of the US population right now, but they take 15 to 25% of Ivy League enrollment. That's way out of proportion, right? If you go to Stanford, 24%. I was there last week. I got lost there, but I run into a lot of Asians. But it's then you go to Berkeley. UC Berkeley just down the road. It's 46%. UC Los Angeles. You know why it's called UCLA? UC lots of Asians. That stands for it's called UCLA. That's how it goes, right? Now if you look at this data, you think the Asians have absolutely outstanding academic achievement. Absolutely. There's no deny. Actually, I did a book on this called The Myth of the Modern Minority. We were trying to research this phenomenon. What happened? And there's all kinds of explanations. One is called forced excellence. They can't do anything else. That's the only thing they can do. But forget about it. I'm going to try and drive to this next piece of data. 2%, however, of the Fortune 500 board seats are held by Asians. That's an indication of the Asians do not arise to proportionally the leadership position to their academic achievement. So that's the Asians are not very happy. There's a lot of debate about this. Are we real dragons or paper tigers? There's a lot of writing among the Asian communities. What's going on here? So we could be, maybe there's a glass ceiling. Of course, for Asians, we'll call it the bamboo ceiling. And then maybe our great education. Remember Tiger Mom, the Tiger Mother, Amy Chua? Maybe that style of education can get you only so far, something you're missing. So that's the second question we should ask, think about. The third one is, why is America still here? That's not a terrorist question. Okay, you think Al-Qaeda gets so frustrated. Why are you still here? No. It has to do with another paradox. It's another paradox. You hear today, every day on the news, you read any paper saying American education is getting worse, is in decline. Do you read that every day? You hear this every day, people telling you that. I can tell you, American education is not getting worse, is not in decline. It has always been bad. It has always been bad. According to some data, at least, we were bad, we were worse than the Russians in the 1950s. We were bad, we were worse than the Japanese in the 1980s. Now we are worse than the Chinese and Indians. And here's some data to show you that. This is a longitudinal data. The first international mathematics study in the 1960s. Americans' 12th graders ranked 12th out of 12 countries. Now, that's pretty bad. You can't get it worse than that. If you have that, you can't get it worse. So no one can say we're getting worse. We're always getting better. I thank those guys, whoever of those who took this study, right? That's great. That's good timing. We have been America has been making the ADP very well, adequate decade progress. We're doing pretty good right now. So American education has been bad for over half a century. Really, if you look at any kind of data, people talk about, so America shouldn't be here. But we're still here, right? So what's going on? And we're not only here, and we're not doing that badly. According to President Obama, and some of the other data, actually, you look at, he said America still has the largest, most prosperous economy in the world. It's actually true. Not everything in an election year, people say, it's true. Obama, not everything is, but this is actually more factual than some other facts he has. If you look at the data, it's very interesting. He said, no workers are more productive than ours, and no country has more successful companies or grants more patents. So you wonder, who are those people who has managed not to destroy America, still maintain as the largest, most creative, most productive workers? I'd like to think it's immigrants like me. I come here, I serve the country, but it's not true. Again, you drive to the data, labor statistics. The most high-tech industry, the computer science, computer industry, less than 10% of computer scientists and engineers are foreign-born. So basically 90%. Are those kids, are those bad test takers? Are those kids went to a school? Are those guys supposed to know nothing? So somehow this kind of conundrum exists, or I call it paradox. So those questions, 3 big questions to think about. Does test score mean match? Now, here are some possible explanations. Number 1, I'm going to show you a little bit of data, piece of. The red is the ranking of 23 innovation-driven or developed countries in terms of PISA math scores in 2009. The red, you can see that one. The blue is entrepreneur capabilities of these nations. You can see they don't really go together. Countries have high scores, don't have high entrepreneur capabilities, right? I mean, if you are more statistically oriented, I can show you the scatter plot, which the correlation is negative 0.4, which is very significant. And if you like more numbers, I will show you this. Okay, so this is called multiple way to present your information. You can remember better, right? We have simple diagrams, statistics, and we have numbers. Okay. Overall idea is that PISA scores do not correlate with entrepreneur capabilities or creativity indexes in different countries. Now, how so? Why those countries' kids have great test scores, don't believe they have the capability to start businesses, to think differently. How come? What's going on here? It has to do with this. In teaching, when you achieve something, we may lose something. This is another way to show a 2003 TIMSS data. TIMSS is a Trend in International Mathematics and Science Study. No surprise, US students, 4th, 8th graders in mathematics, they score way behind Asian countries, all the Asian countries. It's really bad, right? But on the same test, there are 2 other questions that's been asked. One is called confidence. I do well in mathematics. Agrees a lot, agree a little, disagree a lot, disagree a little. Another is called enjoyment. Do you like mathematics? So basically the results show American students are very mathematically ignorant, but they are very confident. So American kids said, okay, I don't, but I think I can do it, Just to show the contrast, Singapore versus the US. Singapore is number 1. That's why we all buy Singapore math. You guys getting all Singapore math in there right now? In Singapore, they had a great achievement. But only 18% of their students said, I agree a lot, I have confidence. In the US, we rank really very low. We got nearly 40% say, I can do it. 40% of American students agree a lot, I can do well in mathematics. Now you expand this to some more data. This is actually, I didn't, Tom Lovelace did this data, to show on the same PISA, confidence, enjoyment, globally, they all have negative correlations. Somehow, countries with higher math scores have lower confidence and lower enjoyment. So how do we explain this? What matters? This is interesting to think about, because confidence is the foundation of creativity and entrepreneurship. That's why when you drive in California, see so many arrogant people, we call them entrepreneurs. Yeah, you have to be confident. Zuckerberg in the New York Times says it's insanely confident because nobody likes your new idea, right? Just you have to think. You guys are the same way. You have a lot of confidence being here. You have a lot of guts to try to PBL in your school. That's very crucial. So what has happened? How people interpret this data is very interesting. American policymakers and others who adore standards, who adores No Child Left Behind, Risk Top, they believe American students' high confidence and high enjoyment caused their low scores. And putting it another way, American kids are not good at mathematics simply because they're too happy in schools. They're too confident in schools. Why are they so confident? Because they don't know how bad they are. Why don't they know how bad they are? Because we have low standards. See the logic here? Now the logic, that's why we want to bring in higher standards to our schools. That's why we want to do the Common Core and we want to be global benchmark standards. That's why we want to teach more math. And we want to overload our kids with a lot more standards, but that's not sufficient because without testing, they still don't know how bad they are. So we got to apply a lot more tests on them. And then we want to test them often, early. Remember, we're doing kindergarten now. We're doing early and often, and remind them constantly that they are not only worse than their neighbor. And now with common assessment, common core, we'll say you are New York. You're not only worse than others in New York, you're worse than Connecticut. Actually, you might be worse than Wyoming. God, that's even, Wyoming is a great state, by the way. And you're worse than Singaporeans. So we want to teach our children, make sure they're miserable, lower their confidence, enjoyment. We can improve their scores. That's how we're thinking about this. And Asian countries actually took a different approach because they want to salvage confidence. So they've been reducing math content, lower the standards, trying to bring PBL actually to Asia, to different places, try to bring the confidence up. They said test scores is not worth the sacrifice. So that's why I'm saying this thing. Now, that's one explanation that in my book I actually explain a lot about when you try to go after this one goal, if you go at any cost, you will lose. Just imagine this way. If students is constantly being told, you're not good enough, you're not good enough. And before it was maybe just their friends. Now the teachers, the schools, the state is telling them you're not good enough. Remember that you get us, your kids do not meet state expectations. They say, why? I don't care. I try to burn all those report cards. So that's the second explanation has to do with Lady Gaga. I know you guys dealt with Justin Bieber yesterday, right? You deal with Justin Bieber. I can't do Bieber anymore. I have to do Lady Gaga. I can't find a nice picture to show you, educators, of Lady Gaga here. You have to forgive me. It's hard. Now, how does Lady Gaga explain? Lady Gaga is an exception. She is worth over $100 million. Millions of people following her. It's pretty impressive, right? But you want to say how many people like her? Not everybody. At least not everyone wants to admit in public they like her. But what Lady Gaga is, it's exceptional talent. But if you equate Lady Gaga, Zuckerberg, Steve Jobs, Bill Gates, all people are the same level. They're all outliers. So does a system allow outliers to exist? Is key. It's very important. Do we allow outliers? So what I was doing, I had a kind of little fun with Lady Gaga, so I took her back to my village. I didn't really do it, but but I told the story of Lady Gaga to my father, who is 85, who is basically a farmer, and who is illiterate, doesn't watch TV, doesn't know anything. I went to the village. I'm going back in a month, take my daughter back too. So I tried to explain to him, I said, what does Lady Gaga do, what she is about, and ask him a fundamental question. Do you think Lady Gaga will be useful in our village? And the answer is no, of course not, because in our village, if my village had a curriculum, our curriculum would be your ability to drive the water buffaloes. Right? That's the common core in the whole village to say, because that's your ability. But Lady Gaga cannot do it, so she will be useless. But however, in some systems, we allow those useless people to hang around. In other systems, we don't. We sort you out. Remember the Asian systems? We test you. If you are no good, we not even allow you. We sort you. U.S. schools, we carry everybody for 12 years. That's the big difference. That's the difference comes with even the Tiger Mom would endorse. Tiger Mom wrote an old book called The Day of Empire, which really talks about how some countries grow to become global hyperpowers. Like the British Empire, the Dutch Empire, Tang Dynasty China, the Roman Empire. And she found, of all these great countries, one thing that's in common, they're all tolerant. Tolerant of the diverse talents, abilities, perspectives they can conquer. So to build any big empire, you need that. A diversity, a tolerance, a diversity of talents. The same action conclusion was reached by Richard Florida, who is a modern economist, who has unfortunately left the US for Canada. But he's great. So his book, he talked about what makes certain communities thrive and prosperous. Certain communities, like San Francisco, Bay Area, like Pittsburgh, in contrast to Detroit. Detroit, guys, we have, Detroit, or Milwaukee. He said actually it's the same thing. It's but 3 T's: technology, talents, and tolerance. And to measure tolerance, he invented 3 indices. His number 1 is called the Bohemian Index. It's basically people engage in doing nothing. That's we've got singers, dancers, directors, actors, all those kind of people. And they said the second index is called the Melting Pot Index. Percentage of immigrants. The last one is the Gay Index. Percentage of gays and lesbians in the population. Basically, a different way to show when you are tolerant, you preserve a diversity of talents. You preserve creativity. American education somehow does that. Others did not. And then we have another explanation. Has to do with the resources. This is the map of illiteracy rate across the globe. You can say U.S. That's why I said U.S. should not be a national goal to have illiteracy. In Africa, you should have that national goal over there. So this is the higher, the darker the area, the higher the illiteracy rate. This is an old picture of what happens in American classrooms and homes. I haven't taken a picture of the musical instruments, the swimming pools, the construction papers, all the great things we have in schools. And compare that to 85% of kids in the world live in those conditions. That's their education condition. So top one could be my classroom. I could have become a Justin Bieber. I could. If I had been exposed to music, I wasn't. So today, when you think about this, the difference also is what kind of choices are presented to students. When you have, I think Bill Clinton actually recently said at his nephew's graduation, he said the same. He said, you should be very thankful you have more choices than kids in other countries. But when you have more choices, you diversify your energy. Your energy, not everybody pursuing the same thing. Of course, your average scores will go down. Remember, the more choices you have, it's different. We pursue different choices. But are those choices valued? So the ultimate explanation has to do with beer drinking. You are here. That's a glass of beer. I can tell you this. I told you I grew up in China. In the village, we did not have beer. As educators, you know, time on task has a lot to do with your capacity. I did not have enough time on task with the beer drinking, so I'm not good at it. I came to the Midwest. I went to graduate school, University of Illinois. I went out, to the bar, of course, naturally hang out with them. Folks from the Midwest has a lot of time on task with beer drinking. And by the time I finished 1, they have done 3. Now that's my achievement gap. That's my achievement. I did not achieve as much as they did, but did it matter? So that's the whole thing to explain. Test scores did not matter so far. Nationally, individually, globally, the test score gap is very much like my beer drinking gap. Now, what matters in the future? The past is there. So what's going to happen in the future? I don't know what's going to happen in the future, but there's a phrase you should remember. The Stone Age did not end because they ran out of stones. In Michigan, their auto age ended not because they ran out of autos. Remember this thing? This is actually from Saudi Arabia oil minister said, we got to be very careful. The future is not the same as the past. That's very simple. So what's the future like? The future is going to be like this, like a wheel. You don't know what this is. This is the value distribution of your, I think, $199 iPhone in 2010, iPhone 3G, by the way. That's what happened. So where did the money go when you pay this money? And 58% went Apple computers. And 2%, that's the red one, went to China. And then the rest are scattered around the globe. Now, what does this? This means several things I want to explain. Number one, Apple computers only had about 43,000 employees. And their profit per employee was $400,000, almost $500,000. The Chinese had 700,000 people working on Apple products. They make about less than $1 a day. Now, what's the difference there? One is that value goes to innovation. That's the base number one. Value goes to, if you innovate, value doesn't rely on the manufacturer. So that's the number one question. And there's a lot of people. We got now over 7 billion people on Earth. There's a lot of people, like the Chinese, that do not have access to great education that can enable them to become Lady Gagas or Justin Biebers or Steve Jobs or the inventors. It's not that they don't want to. They want to, but they cannot. So they are over there. They will make that. When Obama said, let's bring those jobs back, you can't. Do you really want to make $1 an hour, put the glass together on this thing? You don't. Now that's where the future is a long global supply chain. Creativity, talents is not only a necessity, but also a moral responsibility for developed countries' kids. Our kids, remember that we have so many things going on for us. There's no reason for us to reduce our $10,000 education to a $10 education. Now, No Child Left Behind, the Common Core is trying to do that. They're trying to provide an impoverished environment. And that's hurting our poor kids a lot more. In the name of getting their basics right, we're depriving them the opportunity to develop what they can do and they want to do. Today, we need to accept the idea that in the future, low-skilled manufacturing jobs will be taken over by machines or outsourced. We are going to, whether we like it or not, we are going to have to enter the creative class. That's what the data shows. We have to be thinking about create entrepreneurs. Not people to wait to look for a job, but want to create a job. And entrepreneurs are not only people who make money. Entrepreneurs are people who create social impact. We call them social entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurs are those who create value within an organization. We call them intrapreneurs. And we even have a term for bureaucrats. We call them policy entrepreneurs. And that's our hope. It's that they will change with the organization. Entrepreneurs has been redefined. In a new book that came out called The Coming Prosperity, redefined entrepreneurs as black-collar workers, inspired by Steve Jobs' turtleneck. We call them black-collar workers. Okay, so there's other people who are creative, who want to create things. Entrepreneurs, in my summary, I would say, simply are those people who are not satisfied with the existing problem and seek to solve it creatively. That's all. We're not waiting for someone else to solve it. I think we need that spirit. How do you help people to say, I can't find a job, well, go create one. That's the thing. So I have locked my basement. Actually, I don't even have a basement in Oregon. My son is not coming back. He has to make a job somewhere else. What are the entrepreneur qualities? In essence, it's called confidence, friends, risk-taking, passion, creativity, all fundamental human elements that cannot be easily measured today. All tests today you have measures simply cognitive skills. Nothing has to do with social or emotional skills. They don't deal with that. Even the so-called collaborative learning, collaborative skills, that has to be driven by social emotion. I have skills, but I don't want to collaborate with you. No, you're nice, I will, but it's how do you measure that? You can't do any of those things, right? So there's a human fundamental elements. It's very simple. And so the new model I would propose, this is a traditional model. Traditional model is employment-oriented. All education is trying to create a curriculum to make a bet on behalf of our children to say what will be valuable in the future. That's what the Common Core is doing. That's all your curriculum is doing, right? Then we reduce every kid into employable skills. That's what, if it's good test, good curriculum, good activity, get rid of them. We create a good sausage-making machine. That's the idea. Everybody wants to be a good sausage. American education has traditionally followed the same model, but not very well. So America, in essence, I don't think Americans teach creativity. We're just a broken sausage-making machine. And because we have local control, lack of standards, lack of testing, as a broken sausage-making machine, the sausage leaked out, they become bacon. That's the Steve Jobs and Lady Gagas. So now our effort is trying to plug the holes. It's trying to fix a machine that's old. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to fix a 19th century machine. We're trying to fix something that's supposed to be fixed 100 years ago. But you know this, fixing the horse wagon won't get us to the moon. You got to reinvent the machine. Today, we have to reinvent. American education happens to have the basics of the new system. It's not perfect, but we actually, by accident, have this new element of the new system. What the new system should look like? This is what the challenge to all of you to think about is this. Education today should be about enhancing every student's ability. That is, in the 21st century, I think what we have arrived at a time of personalized consumption. We're making a lot of products. In essence, every talent is valuable, truly valuable now. In my village, only ability to drive a water buffalo. If you can't do that, leave the village. That's what I did. I couldn't drive it, so I had to leave. In my village, you couldn't use a Lady Gaga. You can't. Today, we can use anybody. How many cooking shows do you have now on TV? Imagine this. Why do you want? Those are talents. You use them, right? How many TV channels you have, right? That's a very good example of how we have arrived. So if Lady Gaga is useful, anyone can be useful. But to be useful, you have to be great and unique. You have to be great and unique. We have moved away from the 1950s. At those times, we need hundreds of thousands of people have similar skills, but just adequate, just good enough. You can train them to be good enough. Those jobs are gone. We need great and unique talents. And how do we do it? This is what I call the Triad Model of new education paradigm. Number one, in terms of the what, the curriculum should follow the child. Emerging curriculum from regional models, think of ASU, Summerhill School, the curriculum should follow the child. Strength-based and personalized. Number two, the how has to be project-based learning. That's why PBL is here. But I revised PBL a little bit because PBL has been misused and misapplied in many places. PBL has been forced to revise itself to kind of, please the new God to do curriculum. So I call this new model called product-oriented education. Children for 12 years, they make a lot of things, but they are very useless. They make it for the parents, for teachers, right? You give them a grade. We want them to make something that matters, works that matter. And finally, where should this happen? This should happen on a global campus. So I want to ask you to think about, are you or are you not working to truly personalize students' learning experiences? To support their strength, look very hard at what they can do, not fixing their deficit, do not look at what they cannot do. If our education system had been in existence when Michael Phelps was practicing swimming, remember Michael Phelps? His ADHD, he cannot read very well in the beginning. Just think about that. If you were under No Child Left Behind, you want to make sure he can read? Michael Phelps would not be a great swimmer. He would still be hooked on phonics in some basement. You can't do it. You have to follow the passion of it. And they have to be global. In my new book, I have a lot of new whole 4 or 5 chapters explaining how you actually can do this. But I want to tell you that something I'm doing actually in University of Oregon is called OBA. We're building a global platform, which we're going to offer to schools, allow schools and teachers to become global entrepreneurs. You can offer your course to your own students online and students in other countries. It also allows your students to create projects and products for kids in other countries. Because one of the problems with PBL is about you don't have consumers. One example we have is that we're getting kids to create the global personalized textbook. American kids can be even first graders using PowerPoint or something else. Create personalized English textbooks for China and vice versa. We want to have a trading platform, and we want to make this thing so expensive that you cannot do anything without it. You cannot not do things without it. It's so cheap, you cannot resist it. We're offering for $1 per student per year. And we're going to launch in July. We're trying to build a global platform because we want schools globally to be part of this thing. If you're worried about losing teachers, online charter school competition, I said, get online, offer your own online courses. If your children cannot access Spanish or Mandarin, get online, get it from other places. To those children, if they have a passion, have a learning, you should not limit to whatever is available locally. So that's the whole platform. We're talking about OBA and get more ideas. So I want to summarize today. Basically, the new God is a giant stone head. It's the false God. Okay? It's not going to predict the future. Any of these tests, another thing, any test, no matter how good they claim to be, can only test a sample part of something. And any curriculum planning today is not going to predict the future. Anything they can predict, that's not going to happen. What we need as teachers, as educators, as parents is fundamentally return to our children's interest, passion, and I believe if you have some students come out of a classroom who are confident, curious, passionate, have interest, they will do great in the future. Thank you.